Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Basqueland Euskadi in the north of Spain once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before. If memory serves me correctly, this will be review number 6 or 7 that I'm doing from this brewery. I've had some very nice beers from them, quite a few different styles actually, but the one that we're going to have a look at today is a sub-style that we haven't touched upon from this brewery yet. So fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go back to Hernani in the Basqueland Euskadi in the north of Spain, as I said, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Basqueland Brewing, who were of course known at one stage as Basqueland Brewing Project. I'm not sure exactly when they changed the name or if it's been officially changed or whatever, but the beer that we're going to have a look at today is called the Chocolate Clouds. It comes in at 12.5% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Pastry Stout brewed with chocolate and marshmallow. So yeah, this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget on the 1st of June 2021. It was released alongside the 6 Degrees of Separation, a New England hazy Imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, that they did with Cloudwater, and that was very nice. You saw me review that one a few videos ago. But this is my first Imperial Stout from these guys on the sweeter end of the spectrum. The only other Imperial Stout I've had from Basqueland was the 7 Minute Siesta, and that was brewed in collaboration with Amundsen up in Norway. Imperial Coffee Stout, if memory serves me correctly, but that was very, very nice. But certainly looking forward to trying this one. Very curious to see how a stout from the sweeter end of the stout spectrum comes out from these guys, and hopefully you enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, I think it's about time to crack on with this then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Basqueland Brewing before, and you will no doubt see some more beers added to that list in the near future, because we do get these beers fairly regularly through Systembolaget here in Sweden. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Spanish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. Not as often as I would like, though, because I know there's some great stuff in Spain these days. I need to find a good Spanish web shop that I can access regularly to get more of the lesser known breweries, I guess we could say. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit more about Basqueland Brewing / Basqueland Brewing Project. So Basqueland Brewing was founded back in 2014, and they're based, as I mentioned earlier, in Hernani in the Basque Country, Basqueland, Euskadi, whatever you want to call it, in the northern part of Spain. But this brewery is located only about 20 kilometres from the French border. But the brewery was founded by 3 Americans. This is Kevin Patricio, who is the CEO, Benjamin Rotzi, who is the Sales and Distribution Director, and then Benjamin Matz, who is the head brewer. But Kevin apparently was the first of the 3 to arrive in the Basqueland, having met a girl while working as a chef in New York, and then he moved over with her. But he opened his own cocktail bar or restaurant in the area, and while living there he noticed that the Basqueland had a huge gap in the market for local beers, and the region was largely home to a number of cider breweries and wineries at this time. But he invited his friend Ben Matz over to the Basqueland to join a project that he wanted to do to actually create some local beers. But Ben Matz grew up in San Diego, and at the age of 17 he bought his first home brewing kit, and from then on he was hooked on the idea of brewing beer for his living for the rest of his life. But after working for Stone Brewing and Pizza Port Brewing in California, as well as Wentland down in Mexico, he moved out to the Basqueland to join Kevin, and he's never looked back from what I gather. But the brewery started off by renting a very modest facility in La Rioja and brewed batches of between 3,000 and 5,000 litres in this facility, which went very well for them. At this point, when they had started the brewing, they added Benjamin Rotzi to the team, and he takes care of most of the business side of the operations at the company. But in July of 2015, they established a larger facility in the Acaregi Industrial Estate in Hernani to the south of San Sebastian, and they produced around 160,000 litres in this brewery over 2016, and they've expanded it over the years with new tanks and other infrastructure, and they've also got a tap room on site there as well. That's somewhere that I would love to visit. I've never been to mainland Spain, I've only ever been to the Canary Islands, but I would love to get down there and do some out and about videos and some interviews and things like that with the breweries down there. So fingers crossed that's something that we can get onto at some stage in the near future. But as of June 2021, when I'm filming this particular review for you, these guys have produced around 225 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I think it's fair to say that these guys are probably one of the most recognisable Spanish craft beer brands for people that are not from Spain itself. I mean, we get Garage, we get Edge, we get Basqueland Brewing, there's a few others actually that have been popping up, and there is another, I have got another Spanish beer in my fridge that I need to write the notes up for the brewery for and get out there. But yeah, it is really cool to see more Spanish breweries getting their name out there. As I've said in previous reviews, there seems to be a little bit of an unwritten rule in Europe that when a country that is good at winemaking tries their hand at craft beer, it tends to go very, very well, and Spain seems to be no exception to that rule, of course. But yeah, as I said, that's all I can really tell you about Basqueland Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer itself then and see how we go. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is very, very inviting. Lots of nice kind of chocolate brownie and chocolate cake and stuff there. But yeah, it looks like a little bit of a kind of Valentine's marshmallow or something like this. It is pretty cool. I do wonder, was this beer maybe produced for Valentine's Day or something like that? Who knows? But there you can see at the top of the can, there is the Basqueland Brewing Project symbol. This can, of course, is a 440 milliliter can. I think I paid, 60 Swedish kroner for this, which is crazy when you consider what this beer is. 60 kroners works out at about €6 for the can, so that comes in roughly about 55 kroners would be about £5. So yeah, about £5.50 sterling, something like that. €6, £5.50 for this is crazy. So that works out maybe around $7 American, something like that. And for a 12.5% Imperial Stout, especially when you consider that it's an imported beer here in Sweden, so that puts another 10 kroners on the price, of course. I think that's insane. 60 kroners for a big 12.5% ABV beer. That's mental, because you will pay more than that for some Swedish brewed stouts, come to think of it. So yeah. As I said, an Imperial Pastry Stout, 12.5%, chocolate and marshmallow in this one. The cocoa that's in this beer, the chocolate, is apparently roasted by the pastry chef Rafa Gorotashegi, if I've pronounced his name right, Gorotashegi. I'm really not sure about that, but the cocoa in this beer is roasted by a famous pastry chef, which is pretty cool. But yeah, 12.5% Imperial Pastry Stout, this one, marshmallows and chocolate. Let's get this guy out. Oh, sparking a little bit. Let's get it out though, and we'll get on with the tasting. And the can is pretty much full to the brim actually, so this beer is being a little bit crazy, so let's just be careful with this. Get it out. I've got a good little bit on my fingers, but anyway, let's hope the head on this one doesn't go too crazy. We'll just need to pour it quite delicately. But there we are. This is my Friday night winding down beer. So yeah, we've poured about 3/4 of it, I think, into the can, and the can's a wee bit messy now because of the spillage, but yeah, there we go. It's lined up nicely for us to do the rest of the review, and we'll pour the rest in a little bit later on. But anyway, as you can see with this beer then, it's poured a lovely dark ebony kind of rosewood colour, as you would guess from an Imperial Pastry Stout, pretty much black as night, to put it in other words. But you can see it's got a nice half finger of a frothy, I would say very dark tan head. It's not the darkest of tan heads that I've come across, but you can see that it's very nice and it is leaning towards that frothy side of things, but I suspect that will fade away a little bit and just become a very thin foamy layer. I mean, at 12.5% ABV, I don't think that head is going to hang around too long. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass here, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and it is fading away to just be a very, very nice kind of thin foamy layer at the moment with a ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I'm just looking at the ingredients on the side here. So it says this one contains, where's the English? Spanish isn't my strongest suit, but yeah, it says it contains lactose, chocolate, cocoa nibs, marshmallow, vanilla. So a wee bit of vanilla in this one as well. I don't know why they didn't say vanilla on the front of the label, because I was thinking when I smelt it coming out the can, there was a wee bit of vanilla in this one. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of an Imperial Stout, so nothing surprising about the appearance of this one. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we get on. This is a beautiful smelling beer. I'm just going to say that straight away. I've always been very curious. You know, Spain it's a very hot country, I think, wherever you go. But I've always been very curious about that, how these big beast Imperial Stouts and things would go down in such a kind of hot climate, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously in Sweden up here and home in Scotland, we love these things because it's, you know, it's cold. We like the big malty, heavy malt forward beers. And I guess, you know, maybe down in, if I was living in Spain, of course, I would think I would probably view these beers as more of a winter thing, a kind of winter treat. But yeah, I've always been curious about that. So if you're watching from Spain, let me know how you treat these. How do you drink an Imperial Stout in Spain? Do you consider it a treat like a winter beer, or what? Do you just like having one every so often? I'd be curious to know about that, what the culture of stout drinking is, I guess you could say, down there. But I'm going to say straight away, this is just a beautiful, beautiful beer. Nothing unsurprising about, or nothing surprising, I should say. Nothing surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is, but it's lovely. The question is, where do we start with it? So, I mean, it's a pastry stout. It smells like a big chocolatey cake thing. So, yeah, it's almost like the beer has a kind of base of like a chocolate brownie or something like this. You can definitely smell a little bit of that kind of marshmallowy fluff to it, but it smells like the backbone of this beer is like a big thick kladdkaka, as we would call it up here in Sweden, or just a big, you know, chocolate cake, soft chocolate brownie kind of thing. That's what you really get is the backbone of this beer. Definitely marshmallows in there though. You get the vanilla out of it, of course. There's a few kind of nutty, I think there's quite a bit of nuttiness to this beer, absolutely. But the chocolate is really interesting in this one. So on the one hand, you get that nice big dark high cocoa chocolate coming out of the beer, and you can smell that, you know, a sort of 70-80% cocoa kind of chocolate. You know, it gives you that little kind of red fruity kind of quality to it. But at the same time, the vanilla and the lactose in this beer are giving you a little bit more of a kind of milky chocolate thing. So, you know, 30-40% cocoa. So I can certainly appreciate that about this one as well. It's very, very interesting from that perspective. So the chocolate's got a real spectrum of things, a darker chocolate and a more kind of milky chocolate. So yeah, that really is worth considering in when it comes to this beer. So yeah, there's definitely a few kind of woody elements. There's a few woody undertones show their head in this beer, the more that you smell of it as well. But I think it really is fair to say the backbone of this one is a big, smooth, like chocolate brownie sort of thing. It's not quite, how do you say it? It's not quite airy enough to be like a chocolate cake in a sense, or a sponge cake, I guess we could say. It is more like a Swedish kladdkaka kind of chocolate, American chocolate brownie sort of thing, a soft chocolate brownie. That smells like it's the backbone of the beer. Some nutty and woody elements in there. You can smell the vanilla. You can smell the you can smell the vanilla. You can smell the kind of nut. As I say, you smell that nutty woody undertone to it. You can smell the lactose kind of giving you a more milky chocolate element there, but some quite high cocoa chocolate in there, you know, a 70-80% cocoa, but you do get a lot of brown sugar in this one, I think, as well. So remember, with big Imperial Stouts like this, you're going to have a very long wort boil, of course, and the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you also get a darker colour of beer. When you've got a beer that is pretty much as black as this, because when you shine the light through it, you only get a very small hint of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to the beer. But yeah, the type of malts you use determine the magnitude of the colour of your beer. But a big Imperial Stout like this is going to have quite a few brown sugar orientated malts, and then when you've got a big sweet stout like this, yeah, you're going to have a long wort boil, and it's going to give you a lot of kind of treacle, caramel, molasses type notes, and you certainly get that out of this beer. So you've got the marshmallow kind of sitting underneath that, but at the same time you can smell a little bit of a kind of concentrated treacle in the middle of the nose there, but there's also a very kind of sweet caramelly note to this one as well, which is great. So yeah, it's got a good balance between a really dark, highly caramelized brown sugar, a sweeter caramelly element, but you also get one or two kind of toasted caramelly notes out of the beer as well. So quite a few interesting things going on with this beer for sure. Yeah, I do like the kind of the depth of the malty base on this one. I don't think there's too much else to say about the malty characters in this beer, to be honest. I think we've covered it all. On the hoppy side of things, you do definitely get a little bit of there's a wee tiny bit of an earthiness out of this one. You can pick up little elements of a sort of floral, grassy kind of thing, but the hops, of course, in a pastry stout will take a back seat to the malty side of the beer. You do get a few kind of phenolic elements rolling their way out of this one too, which is kind of interesting. But on the fruity side of things, which is obviously very important for this beer style, there's definitely a nice wee bit of a kind of, there's a teeny bit of raisiny sharpness, but again the fruity notes in this beer are not overly sharp. There's a big sort of juicy, I do get quite a bit of a juicy plummy note out of this one. There's definitely a wee bit of a kind of dried sultana element and a pruny element in there as well. Some figs for sure, a blackcurranty element, and potentially a wee bit more of a kind of oily blackberry type quality out of this one. I'd be very curious to know what hops they've used in this beer, because it didn't say on the Untappd when I took a little look at it earlier, but I do wonder if it's something like, maybe a wee bit of Summit, or could it be a little bit of Summit, or maybe a northern brewer from Germany, a very popular hop of course to use in Doppelbock and things like that. I do wonder that about this beer, but yeah, this one is pretty damn full actually, but I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one. So take a bit of time and go over the aroma, have a little look at the aroma, as I always say with these beers, but I'm very, very curious to try this one. This is my sipper for the rest of the night. So yeah, this one is the Chocolate Clouds, a 12.5% Imperial Stout with vanilla, cocoa and marshmallow from Basqueland Brewing Project, Basqueland Brewing in Hernani in the Basqueland Euskadi in the north of Spain. Let's get stuck into this one. I think this is going to be a monster. Slàinte, skull, cheers, or as they say in the Basque language, topa. Here we go. Yeah. This is pretty damn solid. Wouldn't expect anything less from this brewery, to be quite honest though. Yeah, I will say that this beer's got a big heavy aftertaste to it, which I very much like. Absolutely. So yeah, with this beer then, where do we start? It's actually got a bit more of a kind of dark, it's got a nice roasty toasty character to it, although I wouldn't say it's more of a kind of dark vibe rather than being roasty toasty. It's very interesting, this one though. I really like how this beer goes about its business, so I'm going to say a big thumbs up to Basqueland Brewing for this one. They've pulled off a solid beer here. I'm just sitting here thinking, where do we start with this one? But yeah, beautiful beer. For 60 Swedish kroner, to have a monster like this, it's just, that's craziness to me. It's a big, but in terms of the Swedish beer market, this one's got a hell of a bang for your buck. So, I would say with it starts off a bit darker, then it really mellows out the further that you go into the aftertaste, that's for sure with this one. But yeah, where to start with this? So the backbone of this beer, it's very much like, the backbone of this beer is almost like, you know, that kind of well-fired edge that you get to a cake. You know, if you scrape the stuff off the baking tray, the bit of the cake that's kind of stuck to the side of it, if you're making a brownie or something or whatever, that's what it feels like. The backbone of the beer on the middle and the back third of your palate, that's what it feels like here. You've got a slight kind of black malty note in there, but at the same time you've got those really toasty, well-fired brown sugars kind of sitting into it. It's just like a kind of very cakey edge that you get out of this beer. So yeah, it's interesting how this goes together. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting how this goes about its business. I like, you know, it's just interesting how this beer evolves, because it's one of these ones that comes off and it's got a lot of, you know, it does have a good, well-fired darkness to it, but the way the flavour evolves in this is really nice. It feels like one of the darker pastry stouts that I've come across in recent times, but I mean, when it's 12.5%, it's not the heaviest one, right enough, but it's certainly got a wee bit of, not bite to it, but it's got a wee bit of a kind of fire to it almost, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's focus on that middle third of your palate then. So sitting within that well-fired, kind of cakey, baked on remnant thing that this beer has, if you go to the front third, the front half of that middle third of your palate, you'll get a few woody undertones in there. There's a bit of nuttiness, you can feel that coming out of it. Pardon me, but sitting on top of this, you can feel the kind of smoother chocolate brownie kind of elements coming out of this beer, and then sitting on top of that, that's when you get that marshmallow type flavour. So yeah, the kind of cocoa notes you get out of this are, it's interesting, the cocoa, some of the chocolate note that you get in this beer, like the darker, the 70-80% cocoa, maybe even higher than that, that kind of mixes in with the kind of Kladka chocolate brownie thing that sits on top of the very base layer. The marshmallow sits on top of that, but then on top of the marshmallow, you're getting another kind of sweeter, more caramelly layer to the beer. It really is all about the layers and how it builds up in this beer, for sure. I would definitely say that about this beer. So yeah, on top of the marshmallow, you're getting a nice kind of sweet caramel. It's a little bit sweeter towards the very centre of your palate. So you've almost, on top of that marshmallow layer, you've got a kind of circle there, and it's like a very sweet, oily kind of caramel. And I would say it doesn't come across as being highly like treacle molasses-like. Those notes, as I say, come out in one of the more base layers of the beer. But as you move out towards the kind of edge of the palate there, if you move out towards the edge of the palate, it's got a nice kind of toasty, brown sugary element to it. You do get a wee bit more of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing coming out of it. So yeah, it's interesting, as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste, you get more of a kind of slightly toasty, brown sugary note out of this one. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste, the beer in some ways sweetens up, but in other ways it just gets more toasty and slightly drier and things. The vanilla, on that front half of the middle third of your palate, you do get a very nice vanilla quality coming out of this beer, which I can certainly appreciate. But this one it's really interesting how it goes about its business, for sure. There's a lot of things in this beer. There's a lot of subtleties and stuff like that, and I do like it. But I think it's fair to say this is one of the darker and more boozy pastry stouts that I've come across in recent times, for sure. It's very layered, this one, and I like how that goes together. We've only really covered the middle third of your palate, but it feels quite thick in that sense. So yeah, I can really appreciate this one. It's a big oily beer, this, but it really leans, that base layer in this beer is very prominent. It's, I don't know if pungent's the right word, but it's really that you know, well-fired, oily, cakey residue on the bacon tree. That's the thing that really lingers in this one, and I think sitting on top of that, you do get that marshmallow and sweet caramel note coming out of this one, and I do think that that suits it. But yeah, the cocoa, as I say, in this one is supposed to be quite roasted, and you do get a lot of that. And as I say, the pastry element, so roasted cocoa, kladkukke, brownie element that forms the backbone of the beer, marshmallows and sweet caramel sitting on top of it. That's a good summary, but you've got all those undertones in there that I was talking about as well. But that's your middle third of the palate in this one, and I think that summarises it quite succinctly. But yeah, border region then between middle third and back third of your palate. Again, you get a wee bit of a build up there. You can feel that nice oily brownie thing. There's a well-fired kind of black malty element to it. But then in the as you go towards the, as you move towards the back third of your palate, you can feel, I think the back third of your palate, the kind of roasty, toasty elements of the beer become a little bit harsher in a sense, but you still get that kind of smoothening, cakey element sitting on top of it. But then on top of that back third, as you always get, you get a bit of that yeasty element to the beer. So you can feel that the flavour of the beer is a little bit taller on that back third of your palate, but as you move forward, it condenses down then into the middle third of your palate. It's quite a nice squashed together flavour, this one. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. The malty and yeasty side of this one is very nicely done, but definitely one of the darker pastry stouts that I've come across in recent times, that's for sure. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the things then. So back corners of the palate, you do get a nice roasty, toasty, earthy kind of quality to this one. So nice, big, well-fired, you know, that you can feel that well-fired black malty sort of thing. There is a wee bit of a more bitey, well-fired black malt kind of element there at the very back of the tongue, and that spreads out towards the back corners of the palate, and that blends in a little bit with a nice earthiness that you get from the hops. The earthiness spreads forward a little bit, but then as you reach the kind of halfway point along the sides of your palate, it starts to become a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense. I do wonder if there's a wee bit of Chinook and Columbus in this. There's something just telling me about the slight floral spice and the kind of there's almost a little tiny, I don't know about tiny being the right word, but there's almost a little bit of a deeper kind of resinous quality to the green side of this beer. But as you reach the front kind of corners of the palate, there's just something telling me that it could be a Columbus Chinook combination, or just Columbus on its own, that is forming the hoppy backbone of this beer. Columbus would explain the earthiness in the back corners of the palate too. I'm kind of spitballing there. I just like playing guess the hops with these beers. Big ingredients nerd, as you'll know if you've watched any of the other videos. But then yeah, round the front curve of the palate, for me, it's a little bit more of a, it has got a little bit of a lighter grassiness to it. There's a wee touch of zestiness there, of course, which if it is Columbus, as I think it might be, you would expect. So there's a wee bit of a nice grassy, zesty element out of this. So yeah, the flavour profile of this beer is very, very nice for sure. The green component of the flavour profile, I should say, to be more precise. But yeah, that works really well. Let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the juicy fruity esters. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a nice kind of cakey sort of build up in this one. You can feel that on that border, you get a bit of a thicker brownie kind of element, a wee bit of a toasty thing there. But the base of that front third of your palate, again, you feel a bit of that toasty, cakey residue underneath, and a smooth brownie element. And sitting on top of that, you get that oily, juicy bubble with the fruity esters in there. So let's pick out these fruity qualities. So when you first take the beer in, it certainly has a wee bit of sharpness to it. There's a bit of raisin in there for sure, an oily kind of plummy element. An oily plummy element. You get a bit of a drier kind of pruny element and things. Go a kind of pruny element coming out of it as well. Then as you move further forward towards the middle of that front third of your palate, you'll start to get a figgy, yeah, you get a little bit of a sort of figgy and how would you say, a figgy and more kind of blackcurranty element as you move into the front half of the tongue, but then on the front tip of the palate almost you get a wee bit more of a kind of oily blackberry type note coming out of this one, which is very, very interesting. So yeah, I do like how that goes about its business. But yeah, in terms, the fruity side of this beer is definitely a lot more oily, and you get a little bit more sharpness out of it than the aroma would have you believe. But it's a lovely stout, this. It takes a wee bit of time to kind of show you all its colours almost, but I think they've done a great job with this. So big thumbs up once again to Basqueland Brewing for this. I think we can round off the review now by taking a look at the mouthfeel. But yeah, it's certainly, I wouldn't say this is the thickest of stouts that I've come across before, but as I've explained in previous reviews, we're kind of spoiled for that here in Scandinavia. I'm yet to find anywhere that can replicate the thickness of the stouts that we have in the likes of here in Sweden or over in Denmark or up in Norway. Scandinavian stouts are kind of unbeatable in that sense, I think. But this one does have a good degree of thickness to it. It's got a nice kind of slickness to it. The carbonation is very smooth, and it's most definitely a full-bodied beer. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But as I say, not as thick as some of the Scandinavian examples. But yeah, in terms of bitterness and things, hard to say with this. I mean, you've got a good bit of bitterness from the malt base in this one, and you have got a wee bit of bitterness from the hop. I mean, it's got to be about 50-ish IBUs, maybe 60, potentially a little bit more. I always struggle to give you an IBU thing. This is my weakest point of beer reviewing, but there's definitely a bit of bitterness in this beer from the malt base and from the hoppy side of things. But the malt base, as I say, nice toasty backbone to it, a good bit of a kind of oily kind of sweetness, a big treacly molasses sort of thing. I think the treacly molasses elements in this beer really come out a bit more from that base layer. They come out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste, but you get a degree of sweetness sitting on top of that. Like I said, on the malt base, it's a really layered malt base that you get out of this one. The marshmallow, the caramel, things like this. The hoppy side of the beer is contributing to that. And then you've also got these nice big oily fruity characters too. So it's a very complex beer, this one, and as I say, it takes a bit of time to show its colours, but it's definitely worth trying, particularly if you're here in Sweden. 60 kroners, you cannot go wrong with a big beer like this. This is definitely a sipper for you to enjoy at the end of an evening, and that's exactly what I'm going to do after I finish this review. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the Chocolate Clouds, a 12.5% Imperial pastry stout with cocoa, vanilla and marshmallow in it from Basqueland Brewing Project in Hernani in the Basqueland Euskadi in the north of Spain. Lovely beer this, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of it. I can feel the booze going a little bit to my head just now, so I think we should leave it there. Thank you again for watching. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Basqueland Brewing. Do let me know some other Spanish breweries that I should check out and some web shops that would deliver to the rest of the EU. If you happen to know any, that would be great to know. I'd love to review some more Spanish beers and breweries on the channel. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Basqueland Brewing, and I will catch you guys very soon. My first pastry stout from these guys, and I have to say I was quite impressed, so you'll see more reviews from these guys at some point soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.